Jana raised her voice. Wait, did I really just say that? Yes, honey, you're actually happy that I'm going on a date with another man this Friday. You could sense the amazement in her tone. Not at all, I replied. What choice do I have? As you yourself pointed out, I don't control you. You're your own person, and from your tone and expression, it's clear you're set on going through with it. So, what option do I have? I'll be back, she retorted. Don't let your fragile male ego get in the way. I love you, and I'll make it up to you, you'll see. So, you know it's wrong, I replied calmly. What do you mean? I never said that. I deserve this. Will your parents or my parents agree with you? Jana looked down, unable to respond, clearly showing signs of guilt. I allowed the silence to stretch, observing her internal struggle. You know as well as I do that they wouldn't agree. You admitted it yourself when you said you'd make it up to me. Why else would you need to make amends if it was just lunch with friends or a haircut? There'd be no need to make anything up to me. You said it because deep down, you know it's wrong, and that makes you unethical. Her voice wavered with uncertainty. But you said I could do it, she protested. No, I didn't. And I never will. All I said was that I won't stop you. I disagree, but I won't stand in your way. I would much prefer you stay with me instead, and after that, we could visit the same club or restaurant. But, that's not what this is about, is it? It's more than just food and dancing. It's about the business you're so interested in, and I'm not that corporation. You do know I still desire you, right? She lowered her head, silent. What's his name? I asked, somewhat resigned. It doesn't matter, she replied. Fine, I won't press that issue. Just know this, I don't want you going with Mr. P. Hound, and if you do, there will be consequences. What consequences? She shot back. Like you and Mr. Hound? You've always told me I'm not just beautiful, but intelligent too. And you've said that not because you had to, but because you truly meant it. So, I'll leave it to you to figure out what the consequences are for choosing him over me. You're bluffing, she sneered. You love me. You always give me what I want. Well, I want this. And as I said, I'll come back, and we'll grow old together. I can't stop you from making foolish choices, but I've warned you. You're on your own with this one. I grabbed my keys and left before she could utter another word. The atmosphere in the apartment throughout the week remained tense, to say the least. By Thursday night, I gathered my belongings and moved into the guest room. Felix, what's going on? She asked, pausing with an armful of clothes. I looked at her, slightly exasperated. What do you think I'm doing? Did you really think I'd stay in the same bed as a woman who's strayed? Are you leaving? She asked, a tinge of concern in her voice. Yes. My wife wants to explore other relationships. Do you honestly think I'd continue sharing a bed with someone who's cheated? Not a chance. She responded mockingly, her voice dripping with childish sarcasm. Oh, poor little boy, is your ego hurt? Without responding, I placed my clothes in the guest room closet and went back for another load. Oh, I see. You're going to punish the big bad witch by giving her the silent treatment, her, she smirked. Can't you see how pathetic you're being? Consequences, was all I said. She couldn't claim she hadn't been warned. Friday afternoon, I left work early and treated myself to an upscale visit to UNIS salon, a sharp haircut, a clean straight razor shave, and a subtle manicure. I passed on flashy nail polish, of course. Next door at a men's clothing store, I picked out a smart casual button-down shirt, pants, and a jacket. I briefly considered getting new shoes but decided fresh kicks might not suit dancing, so I let that idea go. On my way home, I stopped by the car wash for a deep clean, leaving my truck spotless. Once home, I showered. As I was finishing up, I heard Jana arrive and head for her own shower. Half an hour later, she descended the stairs in a new little black dress I hadn't seen before, offering a teasing glimpse of cleavage. She paused on the last step, clearly expecting a compliment. When I stayed silent, she glanced my way again, her eyes widening. Wow, you look great. Where are you off to? She asked. Out, I replied, mimicking her condescending tone. What, did you think your clueless husband would just sit at home twiddling his thumbs, waiting for you? Shaking my head, I opened the door to the garage. And here I thought you were perceptive. I was wrong. I don't want to keep Melissa waiting, I added with a smile, slipping into my freshly cleaned truck. Behind me, I could hear Jana scream in frustration. Melissa and I spent a lovely evening at a wine bar known for its light meals and live piano music on weekends, which gave a lively touch to the modest dance floor. Our rapport at work had already shown that our conversations flowed easily. Even more gratifying was how she appreciated my sense of humor. It might sound cliché, but there's nothing quite like a woman who genuinely laughs at your jokes. We clicked effortlessly, and more than once, our lips brushed gently against each other's ears, cheeks, and lips, igniting a spark that felt magical. But we both knew the reality: I was still married, and we respected the boundaries that came with that. So, we spent the evening sipping wine and enjoying a playful, flirtatious exchange with just our eyes. As I dropped Melissa off at her apartment, we chatted for a bit. She did me a little favor by dabbing a drop of her perfume on my shirt and playfully leaving traces of her freshly applied lipstick on my collar and cheek with a peck. "Go get her, Tiger," she teased with a wink. We shared a laugh before I climbed into my truck and headed home. It was just past 10 when I walked into the house. "Where the hell have you been?" Jana demanded. "None of your business," I retorted, unfazed. "You never bothered to tell me where you were with your mysterious Mr. P. hound. If you hadn't been lying and cheating, I might have asked if you used protection. But frankly, I couldn't care less if you got yourself into trouble. So, I'm not interested in where you've been, what you've done, or who you've done it with." "I don't understand," Jana said, her voice trembling with frustration. "Well, let me explain," I continued. "If you hadn't foolishly suggested opening our marriage, I wouldn't have had the chance to get closer to Melissa. She's an incredible woman, smoking hot, too. So, thanks for that, dear." Suddenly, Jana let out a piercing scream, so loud I wondered if a neighbor might call the police. "You know I despise her," she shrieked. "Exactly why she was the first person I called," I replied calmly. Jana stared at me, her face a mix of shock and disbelief. What did you just say?" she stammered. "Once again, I seem to have overestimated your intellect," I said, a bit mockingly. "Pull yourself together for a moment, this isn't rocket science. You rejected me and flaunted it, dressing up in outfits you've never worn for me, all for some random guy. And now you're surprised I've done the same. You altered the terms of our marriage against my wishes, so I mirrored your actions. The only difference is, I had the decency to tell you who I went out with. For whatever reason, you're too ashamed to reveal your own partner's identity. So, rocket scientist, what exactly is your problem?" The wind was knocked out of Jana's sails. Tears started welling up in her eyes, but I pressed on without giving her a chance to respond. "Let me guess," I said. "Jack Robinson didn't sweep you off your feet like you imagined?" Her scream this time was filled with anguish as she clasped her hands over her mouth. "How did you find out?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "In a tone fit for a game show host," I replied, "and once again, your intellectual shortcomings are exposed for all to see. Think about it. You work in an office with at least 10 other women. Jack is the biggest womanizer known in the building. Everyone knows who's involved with whom, and gossip spreads like wildfire. You used to participate in that gossip yourself. Did you really think you'd be the exception?" I watched as her face crumbled. "For over a month, several of your so-called friends have been telling me about how easily you were falling for Jack's manipulations. One of your co-workers even described it as googly eyes. Who knows, maybe Jack left her for you. But the word on the street was that tonight was the night he intended to claim you as his own, with a room reserved at the Marriott, no less." I observed her closely as I added, "Apparently, the Marriott is his go-to for first encounters, followed by either Motel 6 or the woman's residence. Were you unaware of that?" Her eyes widened in shock, tears streaming down her face as she finally broke down. "Felix, I'm so sorry. You're right. I've been such a fool. How could you ever bear being married to someone as naive as me?" "Well, Jana, the good news is, I don't have to. I'm not required to stay married to someone as reckless and promiscuous as you. By tomorrow morning, you'll receive your divorce papers. Our lease is only for another 3 months, and we're just renting this place. So, you can either renew it or use that time to find somewhere more suitable." Her voice trembled as she asked, "Where will you go?" "Melissa has kindly offered me a place to stay while I get everything sorted out. She's got a spare room that she's using as an office, and once the divorce is finalized, she suggested we explore more favorable terms, very promising ones, I must say. I'm looking forward to seeing where that leads. As for everything else, we'll split it down the middle. Now that you can sleep with whoever you want, you won't have to deal with the reproaches of a wimpy husband anymore. I just hope Jack was worth it." Epilogue. I eventually met up with a few other husbands who had fallen prey to Jack, also known as Mr. Hound. One evening after dinner, he found his car completely vandalized, windows shattered, paint scratched, baby excrement smeared on the seats, wheels stolen, and a host of other damages. As he assessed the destruction, 3 masked assailants clad in black mugged him and gave him a severe beating. The police were baffled as to why, in addition to taking his wallet and fake Rolex, the attackers also targeted his groin with such brutality. With no witnesses and the parking lot cameras defaced, the investigation went cold. Meanwhile, the victims of these incidents, myself included, were enjoying a poker game at one of our residences. After recovering, Jack chose to leave the state, and his current whereabouts remain unknown, though they're irrelevant at this point. Jana, after securing her own apartment, eventually moved out as well. When she realized how happy I was with Melissa, she decided to relocate to another state. Our paths never crossed again. Melissa and I stayed together for a while, but we eventually came to the understanding that while we enjoyed short-term satisfaction, it didn't necessarily mean long-term compatibility. I found a townhouse nearby and settled there. Over time, I matured, gained wisdom, and became more physically fit. I developed a strong connection with someone from my gym, and things naturally progressed. I found true happiness with someone who was not only devoted but also truly intelligent. What's your take on this story? Thanks for tuning in to our tales, where revenge is always served hot. If you enjoyed this, consider subscribing to the channel so you don't miss out on your next dose of justice. Stay tuned for more, and remember, revenge isn't for the faint of heart.